thank you again, Kim, for doing this on short notice. And we know that you're super busy, so we'll be mindful of time. But this is a series that we've been doing that the Collegian Alumni Interest Group has been doing with Collegian students. I don't think when we first set out that we intended to necessarily have students moderate all, but it's worked out really nicely. So thanks, Gianna, for stepping up tonight as one of the sports editors. This will be very casual. We'll have Gianna lead the conversation, and then anyone who's on tonight is totally welcome to jump in. And we'll hope to keep it light and hopefully practical for the students. FYI, for anyone that is on or anyone who misses this, my statement at the outset, we'll post this after the fact to the Collegian AIG LinkedIn and Facebook. So for those who want to check it out afterwards, or if you guys miss it and want to go back because Kim says something super prescient that you need, it'll be there in perpetuity. So now I'll shut up and let Gianna kick it off. But again, thanks again, Kim. We appreciate this.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Jordan.
Sure.
So yeah, it's like Jordan said, I really would hope to see so much engagement from everybody tonight. Don't feel bad cutting me off and just going for questions right when we're in the middle of things, and instead of waiting to the end. I know how that can be, of just sort of forgetting what you wanted to ask and your concerns. So yeah, so I am the assistant sports editor at the Daily Collegian this fall, and it's been a unique semester, but it's been great. Definitely just getting things rolling into week 4 now, and it's been awesome. So without further ado, I have the great pleasure of introducing Kim Jones. She is Penn State and Daily Collegian alum. I can't even explain what this opportunity is to me, just to be able to talk to you and get this experience of everybody else joining in on the opportunity for me to be able to talk to you. It's pretty awesome. And especially in this position I am in, it's just so crazy to tell people I get to do this and I'm so excited. So I would like to thank you as well, but I just want to get into things. And yeah, so basically before I let you introduce yourself, I would like to say some stuff, just quickly first off. But so Kim Jones is a current NFL media reporter for NFL Network, and she works for the WFAN Radio in New York City, which is just so much already about New York because I'm a big New York person. So I would like to open it up to you, Kim, to just further introduce yourself and, get anything out that you would like to get before we get started.
Yeah, well, listen, I'm here for all of you. So, you don't have to be shy around me. Anything goes. You want to ask any question, I'll give you an honest an answer as I can. So I'm delighted to be here. I'm always happy to be connected with my alma mater in any kind of way. And this is great. And I appreciate you guys having me. But again, I want you guys to get something out of it. I think the worth in something like this, frankly, is for you guys. I'm delighted to be here, but I think that those of you who have questions and curiosities and things that you're not sure you should ask, what the hell, just ask me. I'll give you whatever answer I can.
Great. So Kim, quick question, actually, just something fun to throw out there. Do you have a favorite stadium to report at?
Oh, that's a good question.
I'm just curious before we, yeah.
Yeah, that is a good question. I hadn't thought of that in a long time. Listen, I was just in Buffalo, and there's such a charm there, and the tailgaters there are usually insane, and I mean that almost literally. So I think the environment there, because it's a small town that reminds you a little bit of a college atmosphere, is usually my favorite, and they're really nice to us, which also helps. And it's easy, and there was no traffic on a Sunday.
That's always a plus.
I really appreciate that. Exactly. So, that's probably a favorite of the ones I see a lot. And then some of the brand new ones are obviously just gorgeous and, something to behold. But probably Bill's Stadium, just it's really quaint. It's a cool little neighborhood that it's right in the middle in. And it doesn't not remind me of Beaver Stadium. It's not Beaver Stadium, but the setting does not remind me of Beaver Stadium.
Oh, I've never been there, so I'll take your word for it.
Okay.
But yeah, so, covering the New York Giants, and then NFL columnist for the Star Ledger, 7 years with the Yankees as a clubhouse reporter for Yes Network. I want to talk a little bit about that, early Penn State, journalistic feel, translating it into this New York, big city sort of journalistic lifestyle, not only just having, a job that's like set in this type of, feeling and environment, but what has been for you, going all those years of just the difference between, like undergrad at Penn State and this, Penn State has the name and Penn State football has the name in the sports, but the environment, the campus doesn't compare to, what you've done with New York Giants and the Yankees for so long. What can you say is just the ultimate difference, if for anybody honestly like wanting to pursue that higher, lifestyle, looking to maybe reach out to New York City or a city after Penn State to take on journalism?
Listen, my jobs have changed over the years and they're of a different magnitude and everything else. I started at the center. I did internships before I even arrived at Penn State. I think I had 4 or 5 internships. Someone actually sent me, coincidentally, a copy of an old resume of mine, and I got such a kick out of it. I forgot about some of the internships. I would not have been able to name some of them, and some of the newspapers, unfortunately, have gone out of business. So I'm glad someone sent me a freaking copy of my own resume, so I'm going to keep that this time. I might frame it. I will say this. My work environments have changed a great deal, but I think I'm fairly consistent in what I believe I should be as a journalist, what I should be as a reporter. The hope would obviously be that you get better over the years, because I don't know the consequences if you don't. And it was Joe Paterno who, had once said, you're never staying the same. You're either getting better, or you're getting worse, you're never staying the same. And now you hear all kinds of luminaries in sports repeat some version of that. But it was Joe who, as far as I know, first said it. So, and I covered Joe, and Joe yelled at me at a press conference or two, and it was fine. And we got along very well. And I covered Special Olympics. I don't know if Special Olympics every summer are still set at State College. I don't know that, but they were for a long time. And I always looked forward to covering them. And I remember one year, Joe and Sue Paterno walked over to me, and I was, talking to some of the Special Olympics athletes and that sort of thing. And Joe said, "You finally found something worthwhile to cover, huh?" And I said, "Yeah, Joe, I did." So I have a lot of good memories from way back when. And as a reporter, again, while all of us should hope to get better, I don't think I've fundamentally changed a whole lot. And a lot of that is I've always had to work very hard. And I embrace that. And now I have sort of a chip on my shoulder about it, which isn't a bad thing. But, I think what I thought was right back then, I still think is right. I'm trying to buck the trend a little bit with our obsession with anonymous sources. That is not my favorite thing in the world. I used one today, ironically, or coincidentally, to report that Le'Veon Bell went on IR. That kind of anonymous source, and it's not because I had the story, that kind of anonymous source is harmless. That's someone in an organization who can't put his or her name to it. I get that. And that's, again, harmless. What I don't like are the character assassinations that are then given anonymity. If you want to really rip someone, in my opinion, and in what I do, you're going to have to tell me your name on the record. Others see it differently, and that's the beauty of our business. If someone else were sitting on this couch right now with my little dolphin and Nittany Lion behind them, they might have totally different thoughts than I'm going to have over this next whatever number of, minutes plus that we all spend together. But there are things I truly believe in, and that's one of them. I believed in that way back then though, and for you folks, some of this might seem foreign. We had to tell our editors the 2 sources we had that were confirming anonymously. Okay, that is gone, generally speaking, in our profession, though. I'm glad that you're still doing it, but in our profession, that has been lost. And that's one of the issues. I didn't necessarily mean to get into it right off the bat, but that's one of the issues that I think you very much need to have your own constitution on how you're going to sleep at night when you do your job.
Yeah.
And I think that's very, very much up to the individual.
I agree. Yes. I mean, it's kind of crazy for me to say, but what you do is, in my opinion, the living the dream. And your career started similar to where I'm at right now. And between beginning at the TDC and then like you said, covering Penn State football for the Center Daily Times and now NFL Network, that's an ideal path for a lot of people, like possibly on this call right now, people I work with, girls, men. And honestly, just what can you say would be the biggest advice, or even like 3 large pieces of advice you can give for young journalists to take now and, have these big dreams, have these big goals, and when it kind of doesn't go their way, and it's kind of not going in the direction they're expecting, what do they go towards? What do they lean towards? What worked for you?
I think all of you should be very honest with yourself in terms of how much do you love this profession. It's not easy. In some ways it's getting harder, obviously in other ways, technology and everything else that every single one of you is better at than I am, I promise you. That stuff is easy for most people. It's not easy for me, so I have to adjust, and I try to, with varying results. I promise you that. I think you have to decide how committed you are for doing the job. And I'll be really honest with you, especially the women. I couldn't have a family and do my job the way I do it. Now, that's on me, right? There are different ways to do a job. One of my best friends in the business is married with 2 children, and she does a marvelous job. The way I'm wired, I couldn't have done this job without giving it pretty darn near 100%. So I chose that. And I have no regrets about it. But you have to be, in my opinion, really, really honest with yourself. I had a couple times that I could have gotten out. Obviously, when I left newspapers in 2005, I went to the Yankees. After the Yankees, I went to NFL Network. By then, I was committed. But earlier on, leaving Penn State, where my best friend and her family still live, and coming to New Jersey long, long ago, that was obviously a decision of mine that changed my life. And it changed my life for the better, but it didn't necessarily have to turn out that way. So I think you have to be really honest with what you truly want to do. And I also think you should allow yourself, and this is down the road for all of you, but to give it a whirl, to enjoy it, to live out your dream. I was a little kid watching Georgetown basketball, writing in a notebook. When John Thompson died the other day, that was the team that shaped my adolescence, because I loved the Georgetown Hoyas back before, you freaking guys were born. Okay. So, I was always all in on this. And I have great memories of myself at those different posts, whether it was as a kid rooting as a fan or as a young journalist writing about my alma mater and then moving on to do some other things, some of which were pretty consequential. Others, not every day is a storybook. Not every day belongs, in a book report by someone. So you have to be honest with yourself that you want it. It is a tough road and it is a tough business. You also, in my opinion, and I only know my way, you have to be willing to work very, very hard. I worked at Champs. That's still in State College. I know that. I worked at Champs on Atherton Street for a long time, for a while I was getting my master's. I got home smelling like fried food every night. Sometimes I tended bar. Actually made more money probably back then than I was at the CDT, to be honest with you. But those days I could not do now. And I laugh about that sometimes. So I think this is a long-winded way for me to say, if you want 3 things from me, I think you have to be honest with yourself that this is what you want to do and you want to work hard, because I don't know any other way. Number 2, I think that you have to figure out where you want to be. Did I want to stay at Penn State after graduation? Not necessarily. The CDT ended up having an opening. Do you want to move home wherever home is? Do you want to get settled somewhere else? Are you in love with a big city? Whether it's New York City or otherwise. Do you have a geographical area you want to settle in and then find a job there? That's a different decision than being offered a job and moving for it. I had an offer at one point, I don't even know when, to go to in Lexington, the Herald Leader, I think it's called. And I ended up turning that job down. And I don't remember exactly when that was, to be honest with you. But you have to, your own personal happiness and well-being has to be something you consider. And the third thing is a combination of, to use a couple cliches, you got to be able to roll with the punches, but you also need to enjoy what you're doing. There's nothing I like less than when I run across people in my profession, whether regularly or irregularly, and they're miserable. If you're going to be miserable in this profession, I honestly don't think it's worth it for you. And I mean that, and maybe not, that's not as focused to folks at your age, to be honest. But I see people in my profession who are miserable, and I wish for their sake they would take the leap and find something that makes them happy. So those would be probably 3 themes that I would share with you, albeit in a fairly long-winded way.
No, honestly, the way you answer that makes me ask then, is there a right time? Is there a wrong time to know that? Say you take these big opportunities,
Yep.
In journalism, I feel like even I myself throughout the last 2 years at Penn State, I've questioned it, and I've sat here and I've been, is this really what is my future? Is it, but in a different direction?
Yep.
So you say, too, like the older sometimes, or the ones you said that you felt, you noticed, didn't really have that passion. And that surprises me because, you're sitting, you're kind of like, oh my gosh, I'm graduating in 2 years. I feel like I need to know that passion, but I yeah, so
that's an individual thing that I don't tell people how to answer. The one thing I would tell you though is being indecisive is part of life. A leap of faith is part of life. When I was at the Star-Ledger, which was from 99 through the 2005 Super Bowl in Jacksonville, so whatever, a few years there, that was one of my shorter stops. I love that job. I was an NFL columnist, I think one of 2 women at the time in the country. I don't get wrapped up in that. I'm not a numbers counter, generally speaking, but that was brought to my attention way back then. I interviewed the late Sean Taylor, which is one of my absolute most memorable moments of my career. And if any of you don't know who Sean Taylor is, Google him. I believe he would have been the best safety to ever play in the league forever. But, I think that when we make big decisions, sometimes you're betting on yourself, and sometimes you're betting on whatever faith you have. And I'm not telling you anything in that regard, that's individual stuff, but whatever you really believe in, including yourself, sometimes you just have to bank on. And I was as happy as I could be as an NFL columnist at the Star-Ledger, and the Yes Network called me to ask me to audition. And I was at the Super Bowl, and I said no. I couldn't do it. They offered to fly me up and back. I said, I'm working for the Star-Ledger. It's the week of the Super Bowl. I can't do any of that. I'd never heard of these people in my life. And they called back some later. And when they offered me the job, I was shocked. And I thought, there's a reason I was just offered this job, having never covered professional baseball, having never been on TV on a regular basis. And the first year was incredibly hard. I was called every name in the book on message boards. It was message boards back then. And people hated me on the broadcast. And I had to weather through it. And it toughened me up. I've always been tough, but it toughened me up. I'm grateful for it now. And I also knew when it was time to leave the Yes Network. But It was a complete leap of faith because I was very happy where I was. Could it have not worked out? Of course. But I had at least some control over whether it worked out. And I'm very fortunate it did.
Well, I mean, I'm sure
you're never going to know is my point. You're never, there'll be times when you absolutely never know. Listen, so a lot of you are going to get married. Some of you, I don't know all of the ages here and it doesn't matter to me. Some of you may even be married. I have no idea. Marriage scares the hell out of me. I'll gamble with my career any day of the week. Marriage, no thanks. But I would imagine changing jobs has some similarities to that commitment with marriage, right? So listen, I'm good at one and I'm not good at the other. So I'm batting 500. I'll take it.
Challenging, yes. I mean, I'm sure I can talk for a lot of people on this call, if not all right now, that like you're saying, we've been in that position where sometimes strength is really the only thing you can rely on and intuition. And
Yeah.
it's difficult, you know. And as a junior in college, I'm like, wow, there's so much of a road ahead. You know, what is going to happen? But
when I was a junior in college, I'm sorry. When I was a junior in college, first of all,
tell me where you're at as a
First
junior.
of all, I was at the Gingerbread Man. That's where I was. I was at the Gingerbread Man, or I was at, hold on, let me see. I could have been working at Champs or wherever, but actually I wasn't at Champs yet. So
the G-Man's gone, right?
The G-Man's gone, right?
Gone, I think so.
Yeah.
Gone.
Is the saloon still there?
Yes.
Definitely.
Yes.
All right, the saloon.
Cafe's still there.
Mm-hmm.
Cafe's still there. I was at Cafe sometimes. Yes, the weather had to be nice, of course. You know where? That's where I was. I was at the G-Man for, unfortunately, Alabama Slammers, I think. And I was at the saloon for these monkey drinks that came in a pitcher with a straw, basically. So that's where I was when I was a junior. So, all of you are probably far ahead of me on the maturity chain, but, and congratulations for that. I will say this, and I say this a million times a year, and I'm not joking. I had a lot of fun at Penn State. I may not have my job that I have now if social media were a thing, so we're all very grateful for that. But I am grateful that I had as much fun and learned as many life lessons as I did in college. I screwed up a lot, but I learned a lot of lessons and had an absolute blast and have lifelong friends from it. And I hope all of you have that as well down the road.
Well, speaking of right timing and doing things when you're not too sure of what to expect, I feel like as a student journalist, you come into this profession, this field, and everyone's hit with the question or the comment, like I've myself have been, you're going to need to be, versatile. You're going to need to know how to do multiple different things.
Mm-hmm.
And with your experience of being behind the camera, being in front of the camera, writing, newspapers, podcasts, is there a way that you can describe balancing that time of getting that experience between those different aspects? Does one come before the other? Is one something that comes more natural? Should, writing or, working with camera be something that you sort of learn earlier on? Is there personal experience that you felt like, oh, I knew then I needed more of one of these?
I would encourage all of you to either hone your writing skills and embrace them, or frankly, learn some. Because I tell everything I do, now listen, sometimes it's more artful than others. Sometimes I have more time than other times, literally have more time on camera. But I think thinking as a writer has shaped my career. And I think the best parts of my career have shown my background in writing. I am a storyteller. Sometimes the stories have to be very short, but I am a storyteller because I've always told and always wanted to tell other people's stories. And I do think that's important. And frankly, and I'm certainly not going to name names, nor would you ask me to, but I could go through a list and I could probably pretty accurately tell you who has a writing background and who doesn't. I really, really encourage people. You might not love it. I've had young people ask me, over the years, many, many, many questions. And some of them just don't care for writing. They just want to be on TV. And I've tried to impress upon them, if you're going to be effective on television, in my opinion, you have to be able to come at it as a writer telling a story.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, it's, something that I feel like at my age and, at many of us on here at our age, that it's just, you don't truly truly understand how it works and when you're supposed to do what.
But that's because you're really young. Like you should, but like you guys shouldn't be listening to me saying, like, boy, why don't I have some of that perspective? I'm decades older than all of you. I mean, you guys should be having fun and learning and figuring out what the heck you want to do. That's why I'm here.
To help guide, yes. Well, I want to open now, for some questions, just to see if anybody has anything to say or add, or even Jordan, if you had anything. I wasn't sure before we kind of get into other topics and whatnot. So please don't hesitate.
I'll let students go first. You guys,
Yeah.
you guys are in the right shoes. I gave up on sports writing long ago, so but let someone who still wants to work that hard go for it.
I have a question.
Hi.
Hi, Kim. My name's Sarah. What?
What's your first name?
My name's Sarah. Yes.
Hi, Sarah.
And I'm a journalism major here at Penn State. I'm possibly interested in sports. I have family in sports that do that stuff. And I'm in a group here called Awesome, and it's like a lot of girls in sports media and stuff. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Yep.
But I just wanted to ask you, I know it's less, like, it's more common now than it used to be, but what's it like being a woman in like sports? Because it's weird to see sometimes, but now I think it's different. I don't know how to explain it.
Yeah, you know what? When I was your age, we were talking about this stuff, right? So I think some themes remain. I think that athletes in particular, coaches, don't blink when it's a woman asking them questions, or whether it's on Zoom or, when we were in locker rooms. And, I hope next year we're back in locker rooms. So I don't think anyone doesn't expect women to be part of a sports media group. And here's what I've always said. I've said this for decades to women, and I believe this forever. You might be, I still am, and this is the New York City market. This is a metropolitan area. I am still sometimes the only woman in a group of writers, and television folks at, say, the Giants or the Jets, and I'm talking about normal times, not COVID times, because everything's Zoom now, as we know. And that is an opportunity, because I will say this, and this isn't, I'm not someone who knocks men. That's not my point. But if you're in a locker room and your name is Mary, and everyone else is named John, Jim, Robert, and Jamal, Mary's going to stand out, and you have a better chance of them remembering, oh, hi, Mary, than that group of men does, that we're putting on this side of the aisle just for these purposes. So I think it's always been a great opportunity. I think you need to know your stuff. And I think they expect that you're going to know. No one expects that you're going to ask you don't ask a question anymore and people go, oh, wow. They just believe that you know what you're talking about. So you women are coming into a world that has been populated for some time by people like me. And you don't in any way owe us a debt of gratitude, but I think you owe yourselves the idea that you just work to do a good job, because you are allowed to do that. You're not going to be graded differently. You're not going to be treated differently. You're not going to be separated in any kind of way. Women way before me were. None of us are. And I think that you should embrace all of that.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree.
You're welcome, Sarah.
Does anyone else have questions?
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Jonah. I'm a photographer, and I'm a senior. So I know it's not quite the same, but there's overlapping ways that you form stories. So when you work on more long-term stories, which I think is where there can be some differences in photographers and writers, how do you go about developing and proposing and then executing a story? Like, what's your process for a long-term story?
I think that's a great question. And I write them occasionally for NFL.com. I write them specifically in conjunction with the draft every year. I wrote about Yetur Gross-Matos this year. I wrote about Trace McSorley the year before. And in a stroke of incredibly good fortune, I wrote about Saquon in 2017. And then lo and behold, he gets drafted by the Giants. The first step for me, and if I'm not answering your question, Jonah, I want you to interrupt me, okay? Because I think
Sure.
I'm answering your question, but I do want you to just put your hand up if I'm off track for you. My first things, especially with a college player, I obviously have to reach out to the college. Now, in this case, they're Penn State guys, and that's by design, by the way. And then you schedule interviews. Take this year out of it, obviously, but I do in-person interviews. In the cases of the athletes I just told you about, that includes James Franklin, who likes to meet at 6:30 in the morning for some reason. And I'm not an early bird, but you do what the coach wants. A defensive or offensive coordinator, obviously, a position coach, a teammate or two, that kind of thing. And then I usually ask for 2 different interviews with the subject. And what I mean by that is I like the first interview, but then I almost always have to double back. Now, again, this is the long form story. This is not the column that's due the next day. This isn't the writing off a press conference or conference call or Zoom call that is due in 2 hours. This is the long form story. Let's take Trace McSorley. I interviewed him one day. Got in touch with his parents soon after that, went back to Trace much closer to the story being published. And that way I was able to clean up any final questions I had or an angle that I just wasn't as sure of or that kind of thing. I did the same thing with Saquon. I remember Saquon calling me back at, like a later hour in the evening, which was not a problem at all. And we just talked for a long time because he gave me the time. And that helped me. That still helps me now when I talk about Saquon. I don't write about him anymore as much, but when I talk about Saquon now, I still hearken back to 2017 when I first met him and got to know his story. And he really was generous with his time with me for whatever reason. So that is generally my path. Unfortunately, because I've gotten out of writing, I'm a very slow writer now. So I need to budget more time than should be needed to write stories. And that's just me being honest. I mean, I'm just not nearly as fast a writer as I used to be. I have to really, and I pour, with the Penn State kids, I pour over every single word. So, it's a tooth extraction of a process for me, but I want it to be, it's always going into the combine. I want it to be a true representation who the person or the player is, but I also want it to be fair and true. But I'll be honest, I also want it to be good. This is my alma mater, and they give me the Penn State stories. They know that I want the Penn State stories, and they're good at that. But I think they're good at doing that. But for me, it's not easy. But it's still truly the most gratifying thing I do. Is a long form story. The story I wrote on Saquon, and I don't say this with ego. I truly don't. I truly believe is going to stand the test of time in terms of who Saquon Barkley is. And after he read it, and he did not see it in any capacity before it was published, he texted me and he let me know that he thought it was as authentic as anything he'd read about himself. And that meant a lot to me. And again, at that point, neither one of us had any idea he'd be a Giant, and I would, see him on a regular basis.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Jonah.
Does anybody else have questions?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Hi, Kim. I just wanted to say that I'm from New York City, and me and my dad listen to WFAN all the time. And this is super cool because when I was FaceTiming him this morning, I told him that I was talking to you, and his jaw dropped.
That's awesome.
So we're both big fans.
Well, thank you. What's your name?
James.
James. Can you FaceTime your dad now?
Maybe. I don't know if he'll pick up, but we could try.
Try. What's your dad's name?
Chip.
Chip?
Yeah.
Chip might be busy.
He better pick up. I mean, if not, that's on him. There's no football on.
That's right. Is he a baseball fan?
I'm gonna mute myself real quick in case he says something questionable.
Okay. That's a smart man. Someone tell me his name again.
James or his dad? Dad, Chip.
It's James and Chip, right? Okay. I hope he's home.
Probably thinks it's like a phone scam or something.
Right. What's my son calling me again for?
Kim who? No, I don't think so.
Right.
I think he's got him. He's got somebody. Oh, he's got to do like the phone over the neck.
The anticipation's killing me.
Oh, man.
All right, he's gonna pick up. This guy.
Is that him?
Hello?
What's up, Chip? It's Kim Jones.
Hey, Kim, how are you?
I hear you listen to WFAN. Your son James told me.
Oh, yes, every day, back and forth to work.
There you go. I hear a lot of people who do that. That's awesome.
Yeah, well, that's what New Yorkers do.
That's right. That's right. Well, your son said that you listen to the station, so I just wanted him to FaceTime you so I could thank you for listening.
No, I appreciate that. I know you're a big Penn Stater.
I am. Your son's a smart man. He's a Penn Stater too. I love it.
Yeah, well, I hope he continues there. Gets to stay there.
There you go. I hope so too. I hope so too. Chip, it's very nice to meet you and your son. Take care of yourself.
You too, Kim. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah, that probably just made his day, so thank you.
You're welcome, James. Do you have any other questions for me?
Yeah, the question I wanted to ask was, my thing with going into journalism was that I always wanted to leave myself like very open to so many opportunities. So I've been trying to involve myself in like regular news, politics, and sports and just leave everything open. But what you said before about focusing and like putting all your effort into one area, I was wondering what you thought would be a better path, like going specifically into one section or leaving yourself like open like I've been.
No, if you're talking about all those jobs in journalism, right?
Yeah.
No, I think you're really smart to do that. I did not mean to say that you should focus like, hey, I just want to cover, cycling or something like that. That's not the point. I think you're really smart to say, I feel, James, feel like at my heart, I'm a journalist. I'm a reporter. I want to convey news. I want to be that person, whether it's TV, radio, in print. Okay, so you know that. I think it's very smart to be willing to diversify and to be willing to try different genres, different areas. I think it's really, really smart. Because if you focus in too narrowly, I think you're always going to be chasing what in your mind is the dream job. And you may never find out if it truly was, right? But if you're more open-minded, I do think you allow yourself the opportunity to have different experiences. And I would encourage you, to take any sort of opportunity. I would encourage all of you to do that. I wrote obituaries for a summer. I didn't grow up thinking, gosh, I really want to write obits for the rest of my life. But it helped me construct sentences very succinctly. It helped, what it helped me really do? Spell names correctly. I will still ask people how to pronounce their names on a Zoom call. There's a guy, Xavier McKinney from Alabama on the Giants. He's on IR right now. But I said, one of the first things I said to him, is it Xavier or Xavier? And it's actually Xavier. But I think it was my experience when I was really young. I was still I might have only been going into my sophomore year at Penn State when I was writing obits, but it really made me hone in on very small details. I don't like to get very small details wrong because in my mind, that's sloppy. So and who knew back then that I would look back all of these years later and be grateful that I wrote obits for a summer. You know what I mean? So no, I think you're very smart to do what you're doing. And I think the more well-rounded you are, the better. I also think that as we can see, different areas are bleeding into each other more and more in the world we live in. So I would not limit yourself. I would never tell any of you to limit your dreams. As I know that sounds trite. I know it sounds corny. I don't mean it as such. I never dreamed I'd be where I am now. I had some dreams about what I would do. And a lot of them were writing and frankly about basketball way back when. But, I would be a complete hypocrite to be on this call or any other call with young people and in any way tell you to limit what you do. You can paint with a broad brush. There, at some points you might have to narrow in, and for certain jobs you obviously would have to narrow in. But I am a broad brush person, and I think that we should be well-rounded. The better communicator you are in life, the better communicator you are as a journalist or as a reporter or whatever any of you want to call it. I am a big fan of seeing the bigger picture and then finding our own way in our respective jobs. Big fan of that, and always have been.
Thank you.
You're welcome, James.
Thanks, James. Does anybody else have questions? If not, carry back into things.
Hi, Kim. My name is Rachel Malosha. I'm so sorry, but my camera is not working at the moment.
Okay.
I'm actually a recent graduate, and a question that I had for you is, what advice can you give graduates right now who are in this position for applying during this pandemic?
Yeah, I'd do whatever you could, to be honest with you. I would do whatever you could to find a job that doesn't have to be forever. And I'm not going to ask any of you any of your personal circumstances. That's not my business. And I'm not in any way someone who could help specific scenarios necessarily. But what I would tell you is if you need to find a job, find a job. And I know that's not easy. So I'm not suggesting it is. But if you need to find a job in this climate, understand it may not be your dream job. It may not be your forever job. I have a father who worked the same place forever, and maybe some of you do, or maybe some of you have a grandparent who worked forever, the same company, the same firm, the same factory. We're not all made to do that. I've bounced around a lot, all in journalism, but I've bounced around a fairly good amount of times. And I think you need to, in this climate, expect a lot of yourself individually, but don't put the kind of pressure on yourself that's going to break you. The world we live in right now is offering enough challenges. So I would suggest that you do whatever you need to do in terms of the job market, whether it's getting a job somewhere that you never dreamed to work but it's one of those things where you need to work. And I respect that completely. And then when hopefully our world changes again and gets much better, hopefully soon, I would encourage you to cast a net as far geographically as you're comfortable. And I would suggest you use whatever experience you got during this pandemic to your advantage. That you're a journalist at heart, but hypothetically you had to work at, I don't know, the local market, to use probably a bad example, but you know what I'm saying. And I think for those of you who are young, and I've said this to my niece and nephews who are actually a lot younger than all of you, they're going to remember this time forever. You folks obviously are going to remember this time forever. And it can go a couple of different ways. And I think we have to find ways for it to fortify us, for us to use our strength, and then even if it's just to ourselves, acknowledge that we were strong enough to make it through. And then hopefully the job market will continue to improve, and the job market you're seeking, Rachel, will continue to improve and you will find what you want to have. Right now, I don't think any of us, veteran reporter or young reporter, should be putting a lot of pressure on ourselves because the times we live in just don't really allow for that. But I think I hope in the relative near future, I would like to think there will be hiring, there will be opportunities, and you will find what you're looking for. And I don't say any of that to be pie in the sky because I know it's not always easy, but that is my great hope for you and other graduates and recent graduates and soon to be graduates.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome, Rachel. I like the purple R, by the way, so I really like that. Purple's my favorite.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, guys. Honestly, Kim, I kind of want to touch on something that Rachel brought up and what you spoke about. You know, with everything going on during this time right now, journalism and the field of communications is just hard to sometimes find that motivation, that inspiration to want to continue, to want to, you know, come up with great story articles and, you know, propose unique content. And it's a struggle to right now to kind of separate yourself as, you know, a journalist in this industry, communications major in this industry. You know, what advice do you have to just right now during this time? What are you doing to sort of keep your head high, you know, things lifted, things positive, that attitude the same, still feel motivated and inspired?
You know, that's a really good question. And here, listen, and I am not an expert on this stuff. I'm sharing stuff with you guys that I think, that I feel, it's from my heart, but you know, I'm no expert on any of this. I have down days. The quarantine was rough. You know, the days and weeks, you know, since, or, you know, it's hard to say exactly what stage we're in. But I think things are getting better. But I will say this, for me, football coming back, because I love football so much, and I really do still love my job. And for many reasons, I've asked myself a lot recently, you know, where am I with this love of what I do and everything else? And different days, I gave myself different answers, which is okay. And football coming back, and by back, I mean Sunday and Monday. I was lucky. I had the Bills game Sunday against the Jets. I had the Giants game last night against the Steelers. And I mean pregame, of course. NFL Network, we're not on live during the game or anything. But it really re-energized me. It really did. It made me remember why I loved football as a little kid. You know, why I, you know, at one Christmas, I got a Raiders sweatshirt, for God's sake. Somehow I was a Raiders fan. And it wasn't like, you know, you guys growing up seeing all the teams. You know, it was much more regionalized then. I was an Eagles fan for a short time. I had an Eagles vest. That was actually kind of cool, to be honest with you. It's long gone. But an Eagles vest that now would look really cool and vintage and all of that stuff. So I was really excited to be on the air Sunday. And I've been doing this a long, long time. And I drove home that night from Buffalo. It's a 6-hour drive. They're not allowing us to fly yet. And, you know, listen, parts of driving from Binghamton to Scranton and then, you know, getting on 80, you know, aren't the best, you know, in terms of like energy and everything else. I was getting a little bit tired, to be honest with you. But the whole time I was so happy. And then yesterday I was at MetLife Stadium and I was bouncing off the walls. And I can't exactly explain to you how I found all of this. It feels like I'm the luckiest person in the world. It really does. And I hope whether it's Rachel, whether it's James, whether it's any of you on this call, not only find gratification in this profession, assuming that's what you end up in and stay in, that mirrors mine, because it has given me great joy over the years. Heartache sometimes. Listen, one other thing, by the way, I've cried on camera on NFL Network, on Yes Network, and I've cried on WFAN. I do think, and it wasn't related to the times we're living in now, although that would have been understandable at times as well. But I want you guys to be really honest, not only with yourselves, but with your audience. And it's from the heart. Like, I don't try to. I would never step on air, whether it was radio or television, and say, boy, a good cry today would generate interest or generate calls. Not in a gazillion years would I ever do that. But when it happens, it happens. And it's partly because of me as a person, but I believe it's mostly because how much I love my role as a journalist and as a communicator, or, radio talk show host, or on television. So I've already said this to some degree tonight, I think, but my hope for all of you is not that everything goes swimmingly and it's an easy path and you look back in 40 years and say, gosh, boy, feel like I never worked a day. I want you to feel like you work days. I want you to be exhausted at the end of some days. I want you to feel like you can't get up in the morning because you've been working 6 straight days in a row. Because that, to me, is what being a reporter and being a journalist is all about. I work again tomorrow. Would I prefer to have tomorrow off? To be honest with you, I'm 50-50 on it, but I'll be at the Jets tomorrow and I'm happy to go. I wouldn't want to drive to Buffalo again tomorrow because it's a long drive. But, I want for you guys, for your careers to be whatever they want, but also for you to feel the freedom for your career to be whatever you want, and you're allowed to change. Don't look at me as an example to follow in the sense that I've been a reporter since I left Penn State, aside from the tending bar and waitressing on the side. I don't want you to look at that because I don't want you to feel like it's a life commitment. It may run its course for you. And that's okay too. I promise that would have been okay with me had I truly been tugged by the heartstrings to try something else. I just never was.
So following those different paths and, experiencing that raw emotion, that raw feeling, day to day, like you're saying, kind of through this journey of, taking on this field and this, unique, honestly, major. You mentioned in a Project X episode as a featured guest that you hate losing more than you like winning. And I kind of
Project X? Is that at Penn State?
No, it was with no, it was an episode.
What's Project X? I was on it?
Yeah.
What the hell are we talking about?
It was like a podcast type of.
How long ago was this? Holy shit, I forgot.
2018, I think. Yes. Was it with, I can't remember his first name now, but it was like Steiner.
Oh, Steiner Sports,
yes.
Oh, I was there to talk to a group, and he ropes me into for this interview that was eternal. I was like, dude, I got an Uber outside.
Oh, that's funny. Well, I remember that you had said this, and it made me think. In what ways do you kind of apply?
What did I say? I'm sorry, Gianna. What the hell did I say?
That's okay. That you hate losing more than you like.
Oh, winning. I do. I hate losing. I hate losing.
Yeah, and you kind of mentioned, which I agree with about that. It's definitely more of a phrase you hear from athletes and from coaches, and how in your eyes do you apply that then to sort of the world of journalism? Is it is the winning side of it like the opportunity and experience versus the success?
Yes.
Is the losing, failing, but getting back on your feet, or is it missing out on those opportunities?
Well, no doubt that the failing is about getting up again. No doubt about that. And I don't even need to give you a long-winded elaboration there. We all fail. We all get beat on stories. It drives me freaking bonkers when it happens. Sometimes I know I'm close, can't get it, and then I lose and I hate it. But there's no doubt about the getting back up because there's no other alternative as far as I'm concerned. Now, about the winning, I look at winning a little bit differently. Like, I know every day if I win or lose at work. okay? Because I'm pretty honest with myself and it's been a long time. So I know if I did a good job today or if I did, a middle of the road, half-assed job, to be honest with you. And obviously I know if I screwed up. Screwing up to me is the worst, but I've gotten past the part of being a perfectionist. So if I misspeak, I called Daniel Jones David Jones in some weird brain cramp. There's just nothing you can do about that. I used to beat myself up for that kind of stuff for weeks. Now I'll probably call him David next time I'm on the air, by the way. But, that kind of stuff bothers me less. You meant to say 5 yards a carry and you, for some reason, said 6. I don't care. Stuff that you can look up, I don't care. I've had men in bars say to me, let's do trivia to see if you know more sports than I do. I don't effing do trivia for a living, jerk off. You know what I mean? So, you have to understand, who you are, right? Trivia doesn't define, whether I'm a journalist or not. So, and I think I've kind of said that to people, way back when I used to go out. So anyway, I know every day if I win or lose. Once in a while, and I mean this, we're a bad profession when it comes to this stuff. Once in a while, you get the email or text saying, good job. Don't count on it. It is not the way, in my experience, our profession operates very often. Our profession is not very good at that kind of, let's pat each other on the back kind of stuff. Sometimes you have to pat yourself on the back a little bit. Not my favorite thing in the world, but even if you just do it between you, yourself, and I, you know what I mean? You know that you did a good job that day. So I think in my opinion, and I'm a little weird on this, and I know people who don't feel this way and probably think I'm a weirdo, I honestly think you win or lose every day. Very rarely do I think it's just sort of a, middle of the road, shrug it off kind of outing. My job means a lot to me and I take it pretty seriously in that regard.
I know you kind of mentioned how, like you said, it's not really the recognition and the congratulations. It's the competitive
not a lot
side.
of that. Yeah, not a lot of that. Yep.
Yeah. So owning you, being you, becoming you in this field, in your opinion, is it what you're wearing on the sidelines? Or is it your writing style, after the game? Or is it the way you speak? Is it the way you report? Is it the way you go about something like this? How do you find and separate basically you, maybe as a female, but as a male too, in this industry?
I will say this, and I don't necessarily expect any of you at your ages to be there yet, but at some point you just become authentically who you are and you just let the chips fall. And I know it's like a cliche. It's like those little sayings that we sometimes put on Instagram, and that kind of stuff. At some point you just answer to yourself. At some point you stop, courting friendships or relationships that aren't good for you or whatever the case might be. And you realize that you really have to only answer to yourself type of thing, and again, maybe yourself or a spouse, if you end up married or whatever the case might be, a partner, if you're in a relationship. Obviously children is a whole different ballgame and I don't have kids, but, I think at some point you just become really, someone called me a phony the other day on social media. And it truly, and I mean this, it did not bother me for a second because I am the least phony person in my profession and I'm not joking. And I think there are people with me on that island. It's not like I'm the only one, but I'm in that group. Brian Costello talked to you guys last week. Brian Costello is not a phony in any way, shape, or form, and I really like and respect Kaz. So there are people on that island with you, but at some point you stop playing any kind of role and you start, I have this saying that I'm waiting, publicly to unleash if I ever need to. I'm not running for homecoming queen. That occurred to me a long time ago. That is not my job and it is not my goal. So if someone doesn't like me, while I would regret doing something outright so that person didn't like me, perhaps, I don't really care. Now, you can't have everyone hate you. Unless you get to a spot where you're one of these commentators who, kind of thrives on that and that's his ball game or whatever. But, I just think that you become who you are and you're comfortable in that. And listen, I have a reservoir of knowledge that I can rely on that gives me an awful lot of confidence. I had to work for every minute of it. but the result is whatever the heck this is, which is someone who's just really real, for the most part comfortable, and I think pretty honest with not only who I am, but what my profession means to me, what people mean to me, and what it means to do my job the way I am comfortable doing it, which I am more comfortable than ever doing my job the way I do it.
And you say confidence, and like you said, comfortable. It kind of makes me think about social media and the feeling of getting wrapped up,
Oh yeah, I get it.
In so much of it. It's so difficult. It could make you want to not just change what you're doing, but it makes you change the way you're feeling about what you're doing.
I know. You need to take breaks occasionally.
Yeah.
You just do. And listen, filtered pictures aren't good for any of us, in my opinion. That's a whole different area, which is just crazy to me. I never would have envisioned Instagram, 15 years ago. But I think on Twitter, you need to decide if you want to be someone who is able to have fun on Twitter, is able to disseminate information, is able to block out some of the noise. If you want to be an information person solely, if you want to just open an account and or I'm sure you have accounts, and just have fun with it. I don't have a choice but to have Twitter. I just don't. I have a choice on Instagram. I joined it, I don't even know how long ago. I have a hot and cold relationship with it. Although I will say, as dumb as it sounds, I do find the creativity in the stories to be something that I enjoy, especially on like game days and stuff. And you can give a little sneak behind the curtain to some degree. So it's not all bad. It's not all bad. But man, to be all of your young ages with social media, I don't envy you with the pressure that some of that must feel like. And I mean that.
It is. It's so much pressure, day to day. You just feel like either you have to, oh my gosh, I've heard so much this year specifically, to my face, like the media is fake, this and that.
Oh, right.
And it's hard to kind of be in the position to be like, but the media isn't a whole of like describing, one set of group of people.
Right.
So yeah, no.
That's a storm we all have to ride right now. And I understand it's not easy. And again, I'm empathetic to you young folks. Some of us can just brush it off. I don't answer that stuff. I don't, I just don't. I don't have an answer for them anyway, to be honest. So, but I'm sympathetic and empathetic for what it would be like, decades ago for me. I am. Just don't do anything stupid that costs you, a career like I would have done.
Yes, 100%. Well, right now I'd like to open up, to you guys questions again before I kind of close up in a little bit, but I had definitely more things to ask and say. So I want to give you guys though first the chance to, get whatever else out there you want to know or ask.
All right, I'll throw one at you, Kim, just from a practical sort of skill set perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, you talked about obviously writing, and you talked about what it takes to craft a great story. As someone who's been out of sports writing for a long time, but have seen certain skill sets apply,
Yep.
Curious, and as it becomes maybe something that can be advice for the students, how do you become a good asker of questions?
Oh, that's a great question.
How can you improve your listening? Because again, long time out of sports, but I do think that the writing skills being the third piece of that.
Yes.
If you can do those things well, I don't care what you do. If you're at a bank or the market or whatever, you're gonna thrive. So I'm just curious, like if you're a sophomore, junior, freshman, senior, how do you start to hone that stuff now? Any thoughts?
My first thought is, do not start a question with talk about. That is not, talk about the loss is not a question. It is also the laziest form of a question. And listen, you turn on any of the shows, whether it's NBA playoffs or a post-game baseball game on Zoom. I'll get back to Zoom in a second because I have a point there too. But you will hear talk abouts from reporters who've been in this an awfully long time. It is the height of laziness, and I implore you not to do it. Form a question. Even if the question is, how do you feel? How do you feel trumps talk about a million times over? So think about it that way. Ask how you feel. How you feel is not always the worst question, by the way. As a general rule, as a go-to, I don't love it. How do you feel sometimes works and generates a very strong answer given, if the circumstances allow. So that's my how you do feel, and that's my talk about. I do think it's important, Jordan, in a press conference setting, in a Zoom setting, whatever the case might be, a scrum setting of any kind, that you listen and you play off of another question if appropriate, you reference another question if appropriate, or you choose to take a left turn in the interview or a right turn or a U-turn in the interview and ask your completely unique question. And I will say this about the Collegian. I believe I only spent one semester there. I could not say that with great surety because I truly don't know, but I think it was only one semester. And one of my memories, and I still remember the two people, I wouldn't say them, nor do I think you would know them, but I remember being lectured by two people about asking a Penn State soccer player over the phone, a real phone with the cord and all of that stuff, details about a soccer match that was not held at Penn State. So we had to do phone interviews, to write the story. And the two were, kind of gleeful in telling me I wasn't asking the questions the right way. And I may not have, to be honest with you. Maybe I didn't. But I had enough self-confidence even back then to decide that I wasn't going to let two other people tell me how to do an interview. I ended up going to sports information and writing and working there and, writing program stories and that sort of thing for, I think, men's basketball, maybe women's basketball, and I think eventually football. So I'm not sure about that. But my point there isn't, I don't need any sympathy at all. But my point there is, also be good to each other as colleagues. We don't all need to or want to be the same. I will say this to you, and this goes back to the question, Gianna, it might have been you who asked, about kind of being in the minority in terms of a woman. I truly would not have it any other way. When I gave you all of you, the example of, if I go into the Giants locker room, they have a better chance of knowing I'm Kim than who, Harry, George, and Lewis are. Okay. So, and I don't give that back ever. I mean, I would never, ever run from that. I think that's an incredible advantage and has been my entire career. So I would encourage some kind of understanding, even at your young ages, that we all eventually, and even at your ages, do the job kind of the way it suits us. Not all of us will be in this job forever, and not all of us will be that good at this job. Let's be honest. That's going to happen too. But I do think we all deserve the chance to do this job our way, obviously under the umbrella of what is acceptable overall for journalists and reporters. So that would be my mini sermon to you about my time at the Collegian, which left no scars, by the way, no scars whatsoever. But I do think that doing interviews our way defines us. And talk about will define you, and do not use talk about. Use anything else. I can't remember the question I want to ask, please talk to me, before you use talk about.
It's really rampant. I don't remember it ever being that bad. But
it's amazing. It's the laziest thing ever.
It feels like a last 10 years sort of thing, but I could be wrong. I don't know.
Yep. And it's some really premium journalists. It's not all 25-year-olds doing this. I mean, it is people who've been in it an awfully long time, and you hear talk about, and you're like, I'm going to throw everything I believe in up in the air. You just said talk about.
Just takes a little thought. Form something better. You're better.
Form an actual question. Yes. Yes.
Oh, thank you, Jordan. Does anybody else have any questions before I get back into some?
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead again.
Oh, you can go. I'm fine.
I was just gonna comment real quick that Kim, I can't believe people think you are phony because you're literally the most real.
Well, that's a social media thing, though. Like
the social media thing, I know. But like with the club I said I was in, we talked to a bunch of like women in sports and stuff. But you are literally one of like the most real people that I've like ever like listened to talk. Like seriously, thank you for being so like yes.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I kind of do whatever the hell I want at this point, so I'm kind of lucky.
You were talking about how hard you have to work in the world of sports. It's such like a taxing job, even though it's rewarding. For me personally, it's not going to be my career. It's just something that I'm doing while I'm in college.
Good for you. Good for you, and I mean that. Thank you.
I'm looking at how I can possibly do it in a part-time or something after college because I love it so much. And I'm just curious, like, if you've ever freelanced, which I'm in between jobs, and like what you can tell us about someone who isn't pursuing it as a career and how you can still keep it a part of your life.
Well, I will tell you this. I still get a couple of opportunities a year that they pay me as a freelancer. I have the freedom to be able to say yes to those opportunities, and I generally do. Listen, the check comes and it's a nice little bonus. So yeah, I mean, I think in a way, you know, you're in a great spot. Now, are you a photographer or a writer, or help me out?
Yeah, I'm a photographer.
Oh my gosh. I don't know this because I've never been a photographer. I would think you're in a wonderful spot. I don't know the ABC advice, you know, I would give you, but off the top of my head, I would think wherever you, like I said earlier, you know, some of you are going to choose to live somewhere and then find a job there. I would think that's you. You're going to find a spot that you want to live in geographically, maybe for your full-time job or whatever the case might be. And you're going to be able to reach out, whether it's to newspapers, magazines, sports teams, civic organizations, you know, anywhere that you live as a freelance photographer. It's just a guess on my part, but I would think that you would have a lot of freedom and opportunity, depending obviously where you end up locating, you know, for the rest of your life type of thing, as opposed to the photography part. I would think that is a pretty decent spot to be in. I envy you in that regard, because you conceivably could turn this into something that you enjoy as almost a habit, or as a, what am I trying to say? Not habit, as sort of just as outside of your work. I mean, you know, you could say no whenever you want to too, by the way. I mean, I think that would be a really advantageous spot in the world we live in now. I don't know, but that's just my gut instinct.
Thank you.
Did that help? I don't even know if that helped. Okay.
Yeah, it did.
I mean, you could literally, to go cliche, you know, unearth every stone. You could overturn, you know, all kinds of opportunities to reach out and say, hey, so you know, I live in the community. I'm a freelance photographer. Heck, you could do weddings. You'd make a fortune doing weddings. Do you know that?
Yeah, that's.
You know, I don't know your area. It's none of my business. But my gosh, you know, you could have a great opportunity to have a side gig.
Thanks.
Don't forget about brands as well, because you've got brands that want to be their own content creators now. Good so point. You go right to those guys, and they, you know, then you cut out the middleman.
Yep. Good point.
Thank you, Gianna. Kim, honestly, you know, we talked a little bit about the Collegian a few seconds ago, and you kind of said, you know, and it doesn't have to be in relation to the experience you've had, but is there something, if you can go back in time or advise us to just like kind of take less for granted of right now, you know, as a student journalist, like something you wish you did more, what would that be?
Yeah. You mean at Penn State, wish I did more, or in my career, or just ever?
Yeah, I would say before you graduated, definitely. Before like a career really took off and, you know, sort of the undergrad.
Yeah, you know, I wish I put less pressure on myself. And my guess is, I'm not looking for a show of hands. My guess is a few of you understand what I'm saying just even with that sentence. Like, I always put an awful lot of pressure on myself. I always thought perfect was the goal. And like, I don't want to sound corny. I don't have it all figured out, but perfect is one of the dumbest goals you can ever have. And I had it for a long, long time. And what it did was it set myself up that no matter what I achieved, small or big, I was always disappointed. Because think about it, I was never going to meet that. Listen, I might do 40 seconds one day on a Sunday morning that's pretty damn good, and I can feel good about it, and I can say that was perfect, but that's 40 seconds. You are not going to live any sort of a significant number of days reaching perfection. And I wish I had been much more forgiving of myself a long time ago, because I think that also characterized the giving I was able to do as a human being and the way I was able to express myself in my work. I think this me 20 years ago would have been really cool. And I just was never there. So I would encourage you as much as most of you will leave this and maybe remember something I said, maybe two things I said, and I completely understand that. This might be the most important thing if you are prone to expecting yourself to be perfect every time out. Do everything you can to be more forgiving of yourself, and frankly, to leave that at the door, because it's not constructive in any way, personally, professionally, spiritually, at all. There is nothing about it that was good. And yet I've lived an awful lot of my life thinking that was the goal, and it just isn't. And that would be the one thing, if I could go back, that I would do, is be better to myself. And I also think, by the way, that would allow me to be better to others. And I think that there is no doubt in my mind that's true. So some of you have the advantage of maybe catching that before it really latches onto you, because it's tough. It's really tough. But at some point you have to forgive yourself, again, for saying David instead of Daniel, or for saying, and I'm going to do this on the air at some point, I'm going to call them the Redskins at some point. I'm not going to try to. I'm going to correct myself and say Washington football team, but odds are I'm probably going to do it. Odds are. So, you have to, if someone else did that, for example, if someone else called him, Carson Watson instead of Carson Wentz, you wouldn't say that person shouldn't even have a job. He or she just got Carson Wentz's name wrong. No, you would probably laugh and say that person misspoke and got Carson Wentz's wrong. Everyone knows Carson Wentz's name, right? So beating yourself up for stuff that everyone does once in a while and just isn't a big deal is something that I would implore you to stop doing if you're natured that way.
So being in that high sort of pressured environment sometimes and making big moves in your career and getting to levels and sort of like when that dream job comes around and that goal is like right in front of you, how would you describe the best way in order to feel prepared and be prepared besides just the research point of it? What has worked for you in terms of going in and, if something was to get messed up, like, at the end of the day, it's not on you. You're still confident in what you're doing. You're still, you still want to achieve success and strive to, challenge yourself. Like, how do you not lose sight of that?
I think preparation is the best way to head off any of that if you're truly prepared. And whatever that might mean in any given circumstance, and you are all smart enough to figure that out given a certain circumstance. But I do not regret having to work hard. I do not regret the nights that I was at the Center Daily Times and I was the last person left, because on weekends the sports team was the last team or the last group left. And there were nights when I had to literally sign out the paper. You had to go through the paper, making sure there were no F-bombs in headlines, or, there was no, misspelling of the governor's name or whoever the governor at the time was, that kind of thing. You would initial it, and then the guys in the shop, and I was friends with the guys in the shop way back when, they would then take the paper literally to be printed. As much as sometimes those were late nights on what was very long weeks work-wise, I look back now and am incredibly grateful for them, because that kind of work ethic was instilled. It's not just about doing the work. It's having the work ethic where you expect that of yourself. I think that's the baseline for any other scenario you want to give me. Be prepared, know your stuff, put the work in. Any job that comes along then, you were going to be prepared to do to the best of your ability. It still may not ultimately be the job for you. It may not. It also may be your dream job. But you've got to lay that foundation. I truly believe in that. I truly believe in that.
Mm-hmm. Besides the talk about it phrase, what is something, and this is sort of my final question before
LeBron, talk about being in the NBA finals. You know what he should say? No.
So Kim, talk about now. So, what is something you see in, and this is just for a lack of better way to put this, but what is something you kind of see in your generation happening that, as our generation of student journalists can sort of prepare for, just make a focus for ourselves to, be better at, in terms of like becoming the next leaders and listeners, in society and in the communications industry?
Yeah, I think being open-minded is obviously one, and my sense is your generation has that over all of the rest of our generations, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that that's important. I think that I think empathy is important. I think sympathy is important when someone has loss, and I appreciate that. But I think empathy and being able to put yourself in another situation and imagine how you would feel, I think is at least as important. Again, the sympathy for the passing of a relative or something, obviously important, that goes without saying. But when you can empathize, I think it sets you apart as a person and as a reporter. So I think that that's important. I also think that, when you look at journalism, it's changed so much. There are so many more outlets for all of you, and ways that you can contribute, and podcasts and things that I never would have dreamed of. And I think you have to find out what fits you best and what your talents allow you to do, because we can't all do everything, right? The person who does an awful lot of that stuff in various different areas, I think is selling him or herself short in some levels, because are they really excellent at one thing? I don't know that. That's the way I've always approached it. So I am pretty selective about that stuff. Although I will say that, a podcast or something like it conceivably could have interest in my life. But there are also so many of them now that I think you have to, also contemplate that. But listen, I have great hope for your generation. I have great hope that you're going to do good things, that you're going to figure things out on your own, that, you've adjusted to getting news, on phones and tablets and everything. And for some of us, that was an adjustment some years back, but we've also adjusted to some degree. But I have great hope in the future of Penn State, in the future of our country. I just do. I've always been an optimist, and I can't shake that. So how it all plays out, I obviously don't know. But I will always wish all of you the best, and I would always answer any question for any of you. To the extent that my answers are helpful, all of you have to decide that. And frankly, some of you might say, well, this one thing was helpful, and I'll be grateful for that. And others of you might take more than one thing. Perhaps there's someone on here that frankly isn't finding much of it helpful, and that's okay too. Because maybe Brian Costello helped you more in terms of your path. So, I'm a pretty open-minded person, and as you can tell, and as we've discussed, I'm pretty upfront. And I didn't come on here with any thoughts about, telling you guys how to live your lives. I I do want the best for you, and I want you to find the best for you. And that I sincerely mean.
Well, thank you. I want to let you guys honestly take the last several minutes to just ask him anything you'd want to know. Any concerns, any questions, and it's all yours. So.
Well, if there aren't any more, we'll give you 5 minutes back to go check on Le'Veon's hamstring again, Kim. But I personally can't thank you enough for your time and just sharing your thoughts and honesty and authenticity. You're obviously one of a kind that isn't blowing smoke. You know that for sure, and I appreciate it. We appreciate it, and I'm sure everyone on here picked up a lot of good info, intelligence, and takeaways tonight. So. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep making us proud. Thank you for who you are and what you do. And we really appreciate it. We'll be in touch.
Thank you all. If anyone has a question, Jordan has my email, and I'd be happy to answer individual questions, or Jordan, if you feel better forwarding them to me, whatever I can do, just let me know.
Either way. Yep. Happy to do it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Thank
are.
Thank you so much, Penn State.
Yeah.
Thank you.